The story of how I became a full-time golf YouTuber involved a complete financial collapse, a one-way ticket to Bangkok, and bullets whizzing by my head. And yes, that is all a true story, and today I'm gonna tell you all about it. I'm gonna give you the history of breaking 80. I'm gonna tell you the full story of how I went from a disgruntled financial analyst to having what is, I think, one of the best jobs in the whole world. So if you wanna know a little bit more about me, how breaking 80 came to be, how I got to the point where I was able to do this full time, then keep watching. Today's video is for you. So I graduated with a finance degree from Oregon State University in June of 2007. Peak of the market, everything is great, and I went to work for a small money management firm as a portfolio analyst. But as you might remember, what transpired over the course of the next 2 years was not what I was expecting out of the real world. I was so excited. I had my own office, I got to wear a suit and tie to work, I felt fancy, I felt important, but by February of 2009, the entire financial world had collapsed. My bosses were miserable, our clients were miserable, and frankly, I was miserable. The real world was not what I expected it to be. So I saved up all of my vacation time for that entire year to go to Rio de Janeiro for Carnivale with my best friend. We went down there for 2 weeks and had the time of our lives. We danced in the Carnival parade in front of 100,000 people in the Sambadrimo. We went hang gliding over Rio. We even went down to Iguazu Falls, one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. So at the end of that trip, I'm sitting on Copacabana Beach, I'm drinking out of a coconut, I'm just thinking to myself, like, I should be able to do this whenever I want. This is what life is all about. So I got on the airplane the next day. The day I get back, my boss calls me into his office. He's like, Sean, I can't wait to hear about your trip. But before we do, I just gotta tell you, you're gonna take a 20% pay cut starting now. It was either we all take 20% pay cuts across the board or you get fired. So it was on that day that I realized I was miserable in my job, I was making next to no money, and something needed to change. So at the time, there was this guy named Guillebeau. So Chris is now a New York Times bestselling author, and he had a popular blog called The Art of Nonconformity. At the time, his website was all about having an unconventional life. He had a goal of going to every single country in the world by the time he was 35, which he achieved. And I had found out he had just moved to Portland. So I sent him an email on a whim. I said, hey Chris, I love what you're doing. I'm looking to make a big change in my life. Is there any chance I can get you to meet me for a cup of coffee? And surprisingly, he said yes. So I had to lie to my bosses, say I had a doctor's appointment because I didn't have any vacation days left. I went over to the east side of Portland where I'm still wearing my suit and tie. I walk into a Starbucks and he just laughs at me. He's like, dude, you know you're in Portland, right? You don't have to wear a suit. I was like, yeah, that's my joke. I'm the only guy in Portland that has to wear a suit and tie to work. But during that meeting, he was the one that encouraged me to start my own blog. And so that's essentially what I did. 2 months later, I launched a site called Location Rebel, where I published my bucket list online for the whole world to see, and essentially was using that to hold myself accountable for all of the stuff that I wanted to start doing in life. Now, over the course of the next 6 months, that blog started getting quite a bit of traction. Keep in mind, this is before social media was a thing. This was before YouTube was a thing. This is when people went to blogs for their social media. So it was a little bit of a different time, shall we say. But as I'm growing the site, as I'm growing this platform, I'm becoming more and more frustrated about my situation and what I'm gonna do. And to make matters worse, my best friend, the guy that I went to Rio with, he quit his job and he moved to Hawaii. And he was doing this with the goal of doing it through the end of the year so that he could take his $30,000 he had saved up and go travel around the world until the money ran out. I was like, man, that sounds awesome. And so me, thinking I was the smartest guy in the world, I went to my bosses and I submitted a proposal, a remote work proposal that was much less common then than it is now. And I basically said, hey, let me go work from Hawaii for 3 months remotely. I will take a 50% pay cut to do it. I'm gonna open us up to a new client base. It's gonna make the company more secure as we figure this out from a logistics standpoint, which will then allow you guys to travel more. You're not gonna have to pay for my parking. There were all of these benefits. And so we had a couple meetings about it, going back and forth for a few weeks. I thought for sure this thing was going to happen. And then one day, boss calls me to his office and he's like, hey Sean, we've decided not to accept your proposal, but we will accept this as your resignation. Totally took me off guard. I was not anticipating that happening. We went back and forth for the next week. I had an opportunity to save my job and stick around. I opted not to take it. And at that point, I was completely on my own. I had this random little blog where I'm talking about my dissatisfaction in life and I'm checking off bucket list items like climbing a mountain and running a marathon and things like that. But there was no business behind it. I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I published a post on that site called My Last Day. And after that post, 2 things happened. One, Chris, the guy that inspired me to start this thing in the first place, he said, hey, it's not gonna solve all your problems, but I need an affiliate manager. I'll pay $25 an hour to do 10, 15 hours a week. It'll give you a little bit of money and something to do while you're figuring out what to do next. So I said, okay, awesome. Then there was another guy named Dan Andrews. At the time, Dan didn't really have any presence online, but he sent me an email and said, hey, I'm looking to bring an American dude out to Asia, work for me part-time, 15, 20 hours a week. I'll pay your basic living expenses. I'll teach you how to do online marketing, and the rest of the time, you can do whatever you want. So after thinking about it for all of about 3 seconds, I said, let's go. Let's do this. And a month later, I've got a one-way ticket to Bangkok where I meet this random dude from the internet at 1 a.m. at the Bangkok airport. And it was the single best thing I ever did for my business. So now it's January of 2010. For the first month of that time in Thailand, we pretty much just traveled around through the islands and partied, hung out, got to know each other. My buddy Ryan, the guy living in Hawaii, I convinced him to start his trip in Thailand, and so I got to hang out with him too. But throughout all of this, I'm still growing my blog, I'm shooting the occasional video, and I'm learning how to do search engine optimization, I'm learning how to do blogging, I'm learning how to do online marketing. Exactly what Dan told me he was going to teach. So I'm living in Thailand, I'm working part-time, I'm making like $800 a month. I'm making next to nothing. I'm living in the dumpiest apartment imaginable that cost me $200 a month. Literally, it was like a table, a bed, and a bathroom. No kitchen, no nothing, which was fine because the street food, like the pad thai you could get for like $1 right outside my place, like unbelievable. So I'm not making much money, but I'm having the time of my life as a 26-year-old living in Thailand after being in a suit and tie for 2.5 years. But of course, while I am there, there is, we'll call it some political unrest. There are 2 political parties in Thailand. There are the yellow shirts and the red shirts. The yellow shirts were in power and the red shirts were trying to come in and protest and overthrow that government. This is like months of buildup. Like I still remember, April 2010, it was my birthday. I'd been living there for like 3 months and I really missed playing guitar. So I was like, you know what, for my birthday, even though I don't have a whole lot of money, I'm gonna go to Koh San Road, the touristy area, and I'm going to go buy a guitar for like $30 to be able to have and play while I'm there. So we get out to Koh San Road, there's a giant protest going on. Long story short, there's helicopters that are like flying right above us. All of a sudden, white canisters go out, get tear gassed on my birthday. 10 out of 10, do not recommend. But I still do have this opera guitar that I bought for $30 on Koh San Road the day I got tear gassed. So over the course of the next month, things just kept getting worse. So where I lived, it was 1 block away from this major intersection. And so all of these protesters were coming into the heart of Bangkok because the red shirts were generally people that didn't live in Bangkok. They lived in other areas of the country. And so this intersection was a main artery for all these protesters that were coming in that were trying to get to the financial district where they'd set up like a blocks long encampment that was barricaded with like giant bamboo spikes and like it was wild. So I go out, I hear a little bit of a commotion, so I go down to this intersection. The Thai army is like blocked off the intersection. There's protesters trying to come in. They've set up like barbed wire everywhere. And then protesters, some of which were kind of near me, start throwing rocks at the army. So this goes on for like 10 or 15 minutes. All of a sudden, the Thai army's had enough. I hear gunshots, and like 5 feet to my left, there's a taxi cab that has gotten its window blown out by the gunshots. So I like dive down behind another car, go around the block, come back, see that whole area. At this point, by the way, I think they were still using rubber bullets. Over the course of the next few days, this would escalate. I would end up having to flee the country for a month to the Philippines, which is where Dan, the guy that I was working for, that's where he was based. He had gone back to the Philippines while Thailand figured out their political situation. That was a pretty big tangent, I get, but it also was just one of the more interesting parts of the story, so there you go. So I was in Thailand for the better part of that year, and I decided to move back because, well, I had this girl that I was kind of dating on again, off again while we were there. That girl is now my wife, so moving back was probably the right move. But during the course of the next couple of years, I ended up creating a course and community called Location Rebel Academy, where I taught people how to build small businesses that they could run from anywhere in the world. For most people, this took the form as freelance writing. So I essentially created one of the most popular, most successful courses about freelance writing on the internet at the time. So over the course of 14 years, we had over 5,000 people go through the course. We had countless success stories, and I actually just shut that course down at the beginning of this year to be able to focus full-time on Breaking 80. So right now you might be wondering, you're like, dude, this is a lot of information. What does this have to do with Breaking 80? Well, let me tell you. So it's the summer of 2012, and keep in mind, no golf YouTube, no golf Instagram, not really golf Twitter. Basically, blogs were it, and there were hardly any good golf blogs out there. So I basically said, I was like, you know what? I want to create the golf blog that I would like to read. There really wasn't much out there that was good. And so after a round of golf with a friend, spitballing some names, we came up with the name Breaking 80. The site officially launched in the fall of 2012, and for the first year, content was all over the place. Looking back at it, there was so much bad content as I was just trying to figure out what to write about. Like, at the time it seemed interesting, but it really didn't have any direction. Breaking 80 didn't really start to gain traction and get some direction until I decided to create a quest for myself. I decided I wanted to play the top 100 public courses in the US. I got this idea after playing Pronghorn in Central Oregon for the first time. So the Nicholas course at Pronghorn, it was immaculately maintained. The setting was wonderful. The holes were fun. Everything about this course spoke to me. I was like, oh, this is completely different than the Muni courses that I grew up playing. And so as I became more golf obsessed, I wanted to see and experience more golf courses around the world. Fall of 2013, I really decided to take this goal seriously. So I was like, all right, we're gonna start checking off as many of these courses as I can. So next month, we're getting ready to take our epic fall road trip. We're driving all the way out to Wisconsin and Michigan from my hometown of Portland, Oregon. I'm gonna play like 15 of the top 100 courses in the country. Where I flew into Milwaukee, I went up, I played all the Kohler courses, played Erin Hills, I played the Bullet Pinehurst Farms, came back through Chicago, went up through Michigan, played Arcadia Bluffs, Bay Harbor, the Heather course at Boyne, Forest Dunes, and then I finished at Oakland Hills in Detroit. Over the course of that trip, I think I played a dozen of the top 100 public courses in the US and just had an absolutely unbelievable time. It's one of the things that I realized is like, I never would have gone to northern Michigan were it not for golf, but it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. And the fact that I haven't been back in 12 years is kind of sad. I think I'm overdue for a trip. So I'm taking this trip, I'm shooting some video, I'm taking photos, I'm writing about the golf courses, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, people started kind of paying attention. Like I said, the world wasn't like it is now, where you can get on Instagram and see photos and reels of any golf course imaginable anytime you want. A lot of these places hadn't really been documented, and so it was an opportunity for me to show off these cool places that maybe people hadn't seen before. The next year, I decided to do a similar trip, except instead of doing it in the US, I was gonna go to Scotland for the first time. And I took the most crazy routing for Scotland imaginable. Flew in, played Turnberry, Troon, then down to North Berwick, then up to Royal Dornoch the next day, then Cruden Bay, then Trump International, then Carnoustie, then we were gonna play the old course, but it was shut down for the annual RNA meeting, so we played the new course, and then finished at Kingsbarns. So we basically just kind of like totally crisscrossed the country, and I realized at the end of that trip, I played more of the top 100 golf courses in the world than I had the top 100 in the US. And that's kind of when I was like, well, maybe I should set my sights like a little bit loftier. Like I'm doing all this, I'm traveling to all these places, I kind of want to play the best of the best. And so that's how my quest to play the top 100 courses in the world started. And so this is something that in the early years of Breaking 80, I talked a lot about. I wrote a lot more about travel, I wrote a lot more about these courses, and I'm still pursuing it right now. I think I'm just over halfway there. I think I'm at like 55 out of 100 of the top 100 courses in the world from 2019. That's the list that I've made the most progress on. One of the things that's happened over the years is there's been this like negative stigma towards list checkers. And I am the first person to admit, early on, I was just ticking off boxes. I didn't understand the etiquette around getting on private clubs. I didn't understand the nuance. I didn't understand the courtesy around hosting and how all that goes. I was everything you don't want to be in the golf world. I was the person who was always asking. I wasn't grateful enough. I didn't really understand exactly how it all worked. And I'd like to think that now in 2025, that's all changed. And while I'm still pursuing that goal, it really is less about ticking off boxes, and it's more about the experiences with the people and who you get to share it with. And I've come to realize that, yeah, golf courses are great. It's fun to play cool golf courses, but it's really all about who you're playing those courses with. And so because of that realization, at the end of 2016, I had this idea. And this was something that going all the way back to 2008, I had this idea. I even bought the domain countryclubconnections.com. But the essential idea was there were people that were following my quest. There were members of some of these amazing top 100 golf courses. They were reaching out, they were inviting me to go play their courses. And so I was like, there's got to be a way to connect those people and potentially turn it into a business for myself. And so I went out to about 20 friends that were members at some of these cool clubs and said, hey, I want to start this community, this society that ended up being called the 80 Club. I'll give you free access for life if you help me grow the forum and see where this thing can go. Every single person I asked was into it, and within a month, we had this thriving community that people were really excited about. And keep in mind, this was like 6 months before 1000 Greens launched. There were definitely a few other modern golf societies and communities that were similar, but nothing that was quite like this. Over the course of the next few years, we get it to the point where we had over 200 members. We were hosting 3 or 4 events a year at some of the coolest places in golf, and we had people geeking out about golf all day long in our forums. Now in 2025, we still have that community. The people in it are amazing. We just did an event at Ballyneal a couple months ago, but if I had one regret, it's the fact that I've probably let things plateau a little bit. You know, I've given the content side of things and the website more attention than that community. And so that's something that I'm really trying to figure out moving forward is how can I make this the best golf community possible? And so I'm going to start looking for the right person to come on board and help me out with managing that. So if you think you might be a good fit, feel free to reach out. Hey, like, are you still watching this? Cool. Like, just subscribe if you haven't already. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Back to the story. So this takes us to 2020. And we all know what happened in 2020. At this point, Location Rebel, my other business, is still thriving. Who knew when all of a sudden everybody's locked up at home, remote work would be a popular topic. So April of 2020 was the highest traffic day we ever had for Location Rebel. But then, conveniently for me, another thing happened. For like a whole year, one of the only social things that we could do outside together was play golf. Or at least in Oregon, where I live, you could still go out and play golf. And so what happened? All of a sudden, people got really excited about golf. And people got really excited about researching golf and talking about golf. And Breaking 80, having now been around for 8 years, was kind of in the perfect position to be able to capitalize on that. And so what I had learned like over the course of the previous year or two was that for as much as I loved talking about travel, and for as much as I liked writing about and telling the stories of some of these really high-end golf clubs, there's not that much search traffic in it. So while you might get a few hundred people a month that are searching for Winged Foot Golf Club, you're getting like 50,000 people a month that are searching for Best Golf Rangefinder. And so what I did was I started to shift my content. Instead of focusing primarily on travel, I shifted to the point where like 85% of the content was around products. Reviewing rangefinders, bags, shoes, balls, equipment, launch monitors, all of the stuff that you are used to seeing on Breaking 80, that transition I started making about 5 years ago. And so when I started reviewing golf products in an honest and authentic way, not only did my site traffic go up, but my revenue started going up significantly as well. You see, here's a little bit of the secret. You look at Best Golf Rangefinders, that is the highest traffic post on my site. I've got, say, 15 different rangefinders, and I've reviewed every single one of them, personally. Like, I can tell you all the ins and outs of all these rangefinders and how they compare to one another. If you find my Best Golf Rangefinder site with every single recommendation, you can then go in and get my dedicated review, where I talk even more about the pros and cons of that device, and compare it to other similar devices you might be looking at. And I do all of this without having a sponsor. We do not take review sponsorships at Breaking 80. So a brand can't come in and say, hey, we want to pay you 10 grand to give us a positive review on X product. I do not do that. The only way that I make money currently here is through display ads on the site, which I know they're ugly, but it allows me to continue doing this. Affiliate links, that's where the majority of our income comes from, and a little bit of revenue from the 80 Club. And so what ends up happening is I can be completely honest about all of those products, and then I really don't care which product you buy. For the most part, I'm gonna get a similar commission on any of those, say, rangefinders that you buy, but hopefully, by having all of that information and having honest and authentic comparisons and reviews between them, you're able to find the best one that fits your needs. I get compensated when you buy that product. Everybody wins. So that's kind of the main idea around Breaking 80 and how I decide what the majority of my content is going to be. So then we get to 2022, and I start thinking, you know, this blog is great, but what if we started a YouTube channel? You see, with Location Rebel, I have been shooting 2 YouTube videos a week for years. Like, I created hundreds of YouTube videos to the point where I've got all the camera gear, I feel pretty comfortable behind the camera, but I wasn't sure it was gonna work, mostly from a time perspective. So my concern was, well, if I'm reviewing golf products, I'm gonna have to go out to the course, I'm gonna have to review the products, I'm gonna have to set up all the different shots. It's going to be all of this extra work to produce a golf video versus a Location Rebel video, which would just be me in my office talking to you like this. I said, you know what? Let's just try and do it the Location Rebel way. I'll go out on my own time, I'll review the products, I'll take photos, do a little bit of B-roll, but then I'll just come into my office and I'll sit here and I'll talk about it. And what ended up happening was within a matter of months, this channel was getting 5 times the views of my other channel. So despite the fact that I don't do a good enough job of always showing you the products, it's a lot of talking head, I get that, but what this does give you is very clear, concise thoughts. I try and tell you the exact information I think you would want to know, and you're not getting a lot of me like stumbling around the course or hitting shots or a bunch of extra stuff. I try and make these videos as punchy and clear and concise as I possibly can, despite the fact that this one is probably going on for like over 20 minutes, and most of you probably aren't still watching. But once I started this channel, all of a sudden, that was like pouring gasoline on the Breaking 80 brand. Because now people weren't just finding me in Google search, they were finding me in YouTube search as well. That's the hardest thing about having a website and blogging these days, is you have to do all of the marketing yourself. Outside of Google search, essentially, there's no algorithm that's like pushing your blog content out to people that want to see it. Whereas if you create something on Instagram or if you create a YouTube video, if the initial people that see it like it and the metrics all line up, their algorithm is going to do all the hard work for you and it's going to start pushing it out to more people. So I was able to get that benefit on the YouTube side, get the search benefit on the Breaking 80 website side of things, and then those two things cross-pollinate. So now I've got video, I've got written content, and I'd like to think that I'm one of the few people doing this type of content, what I do, that does both video and written content in a way that integrates really well at an extremely high level. Sorry, that's just me pat myself on the back. I know there's always room for improvement, but I'd like to think that we do a pretty good job. So I've had this like weird realization lately where it's been like, am I a YouTuber? Like, is that my title? Am I more YouTuber than blogger or website owner? And it's just been this like weird realization where it's like, oh, Sean's little side project that, you know, going into like 2018, 2019, 2020, it's just, I worked on it whenever I want. I didn't write a lot, like kind of like threw stuff up at the wall, whatever, wasn't making a ton of money, to all of a sudden having a thriving business that allows me to play golf and travel whenever I want and essentially have complete freedom over my day-to-day schedule. Like it's kind of the dream. That's not to say there's not downsides. There's part of me that does miss working with the team. My dad actually does all my video editing, and my friend Mark does some of the written reviews on Breaking 80 these days. But for the most part, it's still pretty much all me, which is part of the reason why, if you sent me an email and haven't received a response, well, I get like 15 a day asking, you know, various questions about which products are right for them and things like that. I try and respond to as many of them as I can, but inevitably I'm failing. Same goes for YouTube comments. If we have a video that takes off, I try and respond to as many comments as I can, but honestly, it's just a little bit overwhelming. And so this brings us to now in the future of Breaking 80. And I'm at this point where I'm like, what do I want this to be? Do I want this to be a long-term lifestyle business where I can just kind of keep doing what I'm doing, have a lot of flexibility, make a lot of money, be able to test out cool golf stuff and have a pretty good life? Or is this something that I want to grow more? Do I want to turn Breaking 80 into more of a proper media company? Am I interested in selling Breaking 80 and starting something else? I don't necessarily know what the answer to all those questions are, but I do know that right now, as we sit, I could not be more thankful for what I get to do. If you have watched this video this long, it is because of you that I get to do this, and that is not lost on me. And that's why I feel so guilty when I'm not able to respond to some of these emails, and I'm trying to do better. So I ask that you just provide little grace, little patience. When I sent an email a few weeks ago asking people, what questions would you want to know on a Q&A call? Like, the question by far I got the most was, how'd you get started? How are you doing what you do? So I figured I would shoot this video and I'd give you the full, long, unabridged version of how I went from a disgruntled financial analyst to a full-time golf YouTuber. With that, if you made it this far, thank you. I sincerely appreciate you. It is such a pleasure to be able to do this, and I hope that we can go tee it up sometime soon. I hope we can go golf somewhere around the world. If you want more golf videos, more travel videos, if you like all of this stuff, hit subscribe if you haven't. Chances are, if you're watching this video at this point, you're already subscribed, but if you haven't, please do. Drop a comment if you have any questions about me or my story. I'm happy to do my best to try and answer as many of them as I can. And with that, I hope you have an excellent day. I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to share with you the next video very, very soon. See you later. Peace.